So what AI does is it lets effectively everybody act, 3 times bigger or 5 times bigger or 10 times bigger. But because we've never reached the saturation point to the amount of talent we actually would like to have in our company and the amount of things we'd like to do in our company, it doesn't, then the role of human labor doesn't really go away in that process. We just get way more productivity per unit of human labor that we're doing.
Welcome to Divot, the community for people making their mark on the world. For each week, I sit down with the greatest minds in business, tech, sports, and entertainment to uncover the moments, decisions, and lessons that shape their journey so you can shape yours. Go to divot.org to learn more. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
Divot.
Today, we're in Redwood City, California, joined by a remarkable CEO who turned a college project into one of Silicon Valley's great enterprise successes. Aaron Levie is the co-founder and CEO of Box, which he launched from his USC dorm room in 2005 and led to an IPO that's now valued at over $4 billion. Under his leadership, Box has become a global SaaS powerhouse, trusted by nearly 70% of the Fortune 500, generating over $1 billion annual revenue. Beyond Box, he's served on boards, invested and mentored startups, and become one of tech's most recognized voices on AI. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, hey, thanks for being here.
I love, first of all, that you're in Redwood City. You're kind of like between San Francisco and Palo Alto. Was that deliberate? Was that an happy accident?
We migrated north over about a 4-year period. So we were founded in, we were founded in LA and North Carolina, moved to Berkeley, then moved to Palo Alto. And we were there for a while, and then Los Altos, and then we came north. But I do kind of like it. Sort of, it like quite literally is like the center of the valley in terms of just what's happening in SF and what's happening in Mountain View and Cupertino, and you kind of get to see it all.
How did you end up in the Bay Area?
My uncle gave us free rent out of Berkeley, and so as we were dropping out of college, he I don't know if he volunteered it or I guess the word is voluntold, but I was like, hey, Mark, can you give us some space we have a harebrained idea that we want to keep pursuing, and he let us live and work out of there. So we lived and worked out of a cottage in his backyard in Berkeley.
Where did Box start from, and how has it evolved? Almost 15 years later, 20 years later?
20. Yeah, it's scary to say. So we had the idea for Box in sophomore year of college, and the idea was, this was a point where you were just working from lots of different devices, different locations. So I had to hop between like a classroom, a library, computer. I was doing an internship. It was like way too hard just to move data around. And so the idea was, well, what if you just stored the data online and then accessed it from anywhere? We did some research on the market, and nobody had really built like the modern version of that. And modern, in quotes, it's 2005, so it was still limited what you could actually do with that. And nobody had really built that product in 2005 in like a kind of seamless browser-based, really easy to use way. And we said, holy smokes, there's got to be an easier way to do this. And so we had this idea for putting data in the cloud. We called it box.net. We launched it in early 2005. It got a little bit of traction, nothing like kind of startups these days where
It was kind of more consumer focused, right?
Yeah, we basically didn't really think twice about whether it was consumer or enterprise or student based. It was just like, here's a place for you to store files online. Yeah. So you can be a consumer or a prosumer or in an enterprise. But like on our homepage, we talked about everything from like, your photos to corporate documents, and we didn't really distinguish the use cases. Then over about a 1.5 year period, we started to really understand that the big value proposition would be the enterprise, and then eventually pivoted the company.
Do you think that most great ideas are a sort of slight evolution off of where they start? We hear about people pivoting. This was like kind of a small pivot, like a 10, 20, 30-degree pivot versus like, hey, we're building a game and now we're building Slack.
Right.
Do you see that with great ideas, that they kind of like actually stay pretty much with the same idea and variations off of that? Or
I've seen one of everything. Some people like you to look back at their original memo of writing the company. It's like, holy crap, you've just like executed that to a T after like decades. And then others are, the Slack case. I think the ones that, I think if you can be very thoughtful about your market, what I generally would do is be super thoughtful about your market, have a long-term vision of what you think should happen in your category. Start with something that has some range of motion to it. Like, and this is again, like if you could perfectly plan out everything, start with something that has some range of motion, but like an initial use case that is relevant to get the flywheel going. And then kind of expand from there where you have, again, you have adjacencies to expand into. You can do things that look like pivots, but they kind of keep the kernel of the original idea. Yeah. That's probably the highest success rate that I've seen, where, kind of in the company, sometimes it feels like a pivot, but what you're really doing is just, going left by 20 degrees, and then expanding into that market. But I would definitely not like plan on a pivot.
You're sort of like getting the gains of what you've been learning along the way. If you're not doing this full about face, go do something else. You kind of keep compounding.
I think it's very hard to do like a complete rewrite. Like Stuart Butterfield has done that twice now, and like I think he's
unique.
He's very unique, and I don't think he would even tell people like that's a good strategy. Yeah. I think it's better to choose a big market, have a kernel, kind of keep iterating until you find whatever latest definition of product market fit is, and then kind of iterate from there. I think actually right now in the AI world, you're going to see a lot of that, which is like, I have a general semblance of an idea. We should bring automation to this category of work. It's hard to know if this particular manifestation is going to be the one that plays out, but I have some room to pivot around as you get more learnings from customers. And I think we saw that in the early days of SaaS as well.
Unlike a lot of these big shifts, it feels like with AI, the incumbents kind of have this massive moat that's much harder to overcome. Do you think, for the most part, the people that are already there, the people that have been building the software for decades with enterprise specifically, like they're going to be almost impossible to displace as long as they react appropriately to AI? Or do you think most of the big enterprises could be disrupted by a really great AI first product?
This is the first real onslaught of a new technology in 2 decades that has real disruptive power. So the last generation was obviously cloud kind of SaaS, where you saw a real kind of attack on traditional on-premises systems. So this is the first time I've seen a moment where you really could have a re-architecture moment in the software landscape. For existing categories where AI agents kind of need the existing data of an enterprise and they logically kind of drop into the existing workflow of an enterprise, I think on the margin I favor incumbents, assuming that they're executing well and they've got the right team, and oftentimes you still have a founder or somebody kind of technical in charge. So I sort of bias toward incumbents, but with like 10 caveats. Like I think it is a startup environment right now where startups can do unbelievably well. I think startups are moving faster than at any other point in history. And I think there are some disruptive elements to the business models in AI. So that'd be of existing categories. The other thing about AI though, that we didn't exactly have in the on-prem world, the on-prem to cloud transition, was there's actually just entire new categories that are going to emerge because of AI that have no classic software incumbent. And so, if I were totally a brand new startup just emerging right now, I'd probably prefer those categories where I'm not attacking Salesforce, I'm not attacking Workday, I'm not attacking ServiceNow. I'm actually building AI for something that never existed before in the software world, because it's now doing a form of labor essentially for the customer, and there's not an exact one-to-one kind of analog in the enterprise software space for that. And that's going to be complete greenfield. You're going to have hundreds of new companies that are merged that will all get quite successful. You'll have thousands that will try. And in that case, I think it's actually, I would bias toward the startups. So if you kind of play it out, what will happen in practice is some incumbents will fail to execute, and those will be reduced. Startups will emerge there in the existing software categories. Equally, startups will, heavily dominate the new categories of work that AI, creates opportunity in, and some software incumbents will expand into those spaces too. Yeah. So I think it's going to be like 70-30 on one, and then 30-70 on the other, and it's that's kind of how these things tend to play out.
The revenue growth of the new AI companies is just sort of off the charts to where SaaS was. So conversation about this triple, double, and how, oh, it's not even interesting to VCs anymore.
Yeah.
Is AI uniquely positioned that way that like if you can have such explosive growth with AI that if you're not seeing that, you maybe have the wrong idea?
Well, I think that came from him at General Catalyst. Was that the origin of this going viral? He is in a unique space where the returns have to be big to make the bets work. So I would separate sort of what gets a VC excited from, the amount of total surface area of interesting businesses. So I would say for home run venture returns, that heuristic probably makes a lot of sense. And I think that is the new mental model you should have. If you're going to go raise $100 million, you should prepare that your business needs those kind of dynamics. That's totally different from the fact that there's probably still lots of opportunity out there for all new startups to, either grow more slowly or go after a niche that maybe doesn't have the same TAM dynamics. But the reason why this is now happening is actually more important than the specific numbers. The reason that you should be able to, in theory, scale like that, if you choose a big enough TAM and you build the right idea, is that the business model of AI agents and AI companies is just totally different than the business model of SaaS.
Yeah.
When we go to a company and we sell software licenses to the seats in the company, you can generally command, I'm making up a number, $10, $20, maybe if you're lucky, $50 per user per month. That's kind of you're locked into that rough range of software spend per user in the company. Some vertical software maybe charges on the upper end of that range, some horizontal software charges on the lower end of that range. In AI agents, there's no kind of upper limit to the price that each individual user will pay for that software, because you're actually now really at the end of the day, you're kind of acting as a percentage of how much work they are kind of outputting, or what is their kind of value creation. So you'll see engineers, this goes viral all the time online, you'll see engineers that are spending tens of thousands of dollars on Claude for generating code. Because if you're an engineer and you're getting paid $150K, $200K, $250K or more per year, what is the value of 10% of your salary for possibly a doubling of the output of the code you generate, assuming it's, you can generate good quality code? That's incredibly valuable. So 10% of that is $15,000, $20,000. All of a sudden, for the first time ever in history, we have software where you could spend thousands of dollars per person per month to access that software. Because again, you're not buying a tool, you're buying effectively labor in some fashion. So that's what's causing these numbers to get so much bigger, so much faster, is because they're actually a percentage of labor. They're not a percentage of IT spend.
In the theory of disruption by Clayton Christensen, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, does the cost of this just automatically come down over time, or do you get the sense that this is just a totally new model that's not going to come down over time?
Well, it's interesting. So if you were to really graft Clay Christensen's, let's say innovator's dilemma theory on this, the curve that we should be paying attention to is actually it's interesting. Is you're comparing a non-technology curve to a technology curve. So if you were to really do the kind of the capability curve of innovator's dilemma, which is the capability of a thing goes up over time and it reaches customers that have greater and greater needs for that thing, and you go after more profitable customers. What's interesting is today's curve, in the steel mill, kind of example, it's actually people, and the disruptor is AI. And so what's actually going to happen is the curve of AI capability is going to go up over time, and it's going to reach people as basically what the graph would look like. And so all that really matters is, are you delivering work output in AI at a far cheaper rate than people? And it doesn't even matter if that gets more expensive, because people are extremely expensive. And so what you're doing is you're actually just making it so the AI is actually more capable over time. And so the sort of classic idea of it starts out kind of looking like a toy people have talked about over the years, that was AI 2.5 years ago. And you really didn't know what you would use it for. And then over time, it gets better and better. And then it starts to actually take on more of the use cases that people have been required to do. And over time, again, that's where you're going to see the kind of productivity gains begin to emerge. There's a separate overlay, which is just now the cost curve of AI. where on a per task basis, AI will get cheaper over some amount of time. The problem though is right now, we still haven't reached the point where AI can do complete tasks particularly well. So that's why it's going to get more expensive in the near term, because we're going to throw more compute at AI to be able to solve tasks more completely. Then as each individual task gets achieved with AI, it will then go back to becoming cheaper over time as you get compute efficiency. So right now it's this weird mode where it's just going to get more expensive. Everything's going to get more expensive because we're going to throw more compute at every given AI task, and then every individual task will have a point where it will get cheaper. And it's hard to predict when any given task will get cheaper. But I would actually say like we're not even there yet for most tasks at the moment.
I've heard you say that AI agents are a net positive on work and workers. Why is that?
Yeah, it's because actually it turns out that the vast majority of our businesses are doing only a small fraction of the amount of things we'd like to be doing. So, and that is because people are scarce. Talent is very scarce. It's very hard for a 5-person startup to access all of the world's best lawyers and marketers and coders and product managers and copywriters and designers and all of those roles, right? We've all done the 3 and 5-person startup, and we know it's just, you're always going uphill as that 3 or 5 or 10 or 20 or 50-person company compared to the 5,000-person company. And so, and then what's actually interesting, so we're about 3,000 people now. Yeah. We have the new version of that, which is we never have enough talent to do the thing that the 50,000-person company does. So what AI does is it lets effectively everybody act 3 times bigger or 5 times bigger or 10 times bigger. But because we've never reached the saturation point to the amount of talent we actually would like to have in our company and the amount of things we'd like to do in our company, it doesn't, then the role of human labor doesn't really go away in that process. We just get way more productivity per unit of human labor that we're doing. And so even at, again, 3,000 people right now, which is not a particularly large number, but it's certainly larger than, let's say, a smaller startup, most areas of the organization, if I could deploy an AI agent that worked perfectly, like you give it the task and
beginning to end,
and it does it perfectly, you still need a human to orchestrate what that agent did.
Sure.
Pull that work back into a broader workflow. Tell the agent the right thing to go do, because you're getting signal from the outside world that the agent doesn't know about. So no matter what, you still need people to go execute the agents. But in every area of work, whether it's reviewing contracts, generating sales materials, calling customers, creating code, if I could make any one of those tasks 30%, 50%, 100% more efficient, we would probably redeploy the savings that generates back into the business to grow that function faster or to grow a surrounding function way faster. Let's just take a micro example. Lawyers. So every company on the planet has lawyers at some scale, but you have a fixed budget on your lawyers because, by definition, there's only so much amount of money you can spend on that function for a variety of reasons. But guess what? Every single year, our legal team would like to hire more lawyers.
Yeah.
Why? Because we get a set of contracts we have to review. We have to go negotiate with our customers and vendors. And there's a bottleneck in our business, which is how many lawyers can review how much work and how quickly. That's actually a bottleneck to something downstream, like closing sales contracts or closing partnerships. So, but this is a fixed amount of talent that we have access to because we just only have so much budget we can apply to that problem. If you have a tool that could make the legal function 50% more effective, you'd have a choice. You could cut your legal department in half, but again, they've always had this surplus of work to do. So what I'd rather do is actually make the legal department 50% more efficient, which would mean doubling the amount of output per unit of time. So what should happen next? If we're doing our job right, and now you're reviewing contracts at 2x the speed as before, you should have more sales deals that are closing. You should have more partnerships that you're working on. So somewhere else now in the business is the new bottleneck that now has just emerged or that you need to now grow. So you have to think about the company as a total system of lots of interdependent parts. And if I make one part of the system more efficient, either you're going to have a bottleneck somewhere else in the organization, or you're going to have a growth vector that you want to now apply more resources to. And that's what we see every single day in our organization. If we can make some part of the organization more efficient and get more output, usually there's some other part of the organization that we now have to apply more resources to, or that now we've freed up capital to go apply more resources to.
And I think we've heard historically people say, oh, I want to be a manager. Oh, I need more people on my team. Hey, I can't do this if I want to grow, and it's like, and now that the paradigm is totally shifted, right? Where at least the smartest people are like, hey, I can use AI to amplify what I'm doing.
Yes.
And then actually I've de-risked the business by not hiring a huge team, but there's some amount of those resources to go into those people. And then can the employee then be rewarded by saying, look, you are a manager, you're managing 50 agents at some point, and like, this is your team.
Yeah, so there's all these new, really interesting questions, which is what is the future of maybe at the most existential sense, like what is the future of a job and what is the future of an individual contributor? It used to be that a manager, I'm gonna do this in the most crude way. A manager, has a set of people that they have on their team. They kind of tell them what to do. Obviously, it's very collaborative and you work on goals and whatnot. But the manager's job is to make sure that those 5 or 7 or 10 people are doing what they need to produce some amount of value for the company. What's interesting, to your point just now, is that new individual contributor, they are now the manager of the agents doing effectively the same thing. So in many ways, the practices that everybody had to learn for management are now going down one click, and the individual contributor is now the manager of these agents that are going to go execute their work. But again, what's interesting is that doesn't inherently mean you have even fewer people. It means that you might be doing far more as a company. And it might be taking on even more tasks as a company. You might be able to ship 2 times more software or generate 3 times more marketing campaigns to reach the segments of customers that you never were able to, you could never prioritize going after that segment of customer, or you could never build that campaign in the beautiful way you really wanted to because you didn't have enough budget to hire the really expensive ad agency. Those are the kind of things that all of a sudden get opened up as a result of having, near unlimited access to abundant labor force, which is AI.
You don't see the future box being just like Aaron and then just 10,000 agents.
Maybe if we were starting from scratch, I would push the limits and I'd have 20 agents. But even humans are going to be bottlenecked on their ability to review the work being done, to orchestrate it across other things, to have the mental energy to prompt it in the right way. Nothing. There's no ultimate panacea of these autonomous agents running around doing all your work for you.
Yeah.
You will have to prompt it, you'll have to review it, you have to edit it, you have to incorporate it back into a broader system, and that will be the new rate limiter. But I think you actually still get a 2 or 5 or 10x productivity gain as a result.
That's right. And if anybody that's used any version of AI that's out feels this, it's like my wife asked me to do some coupon for a fundraiser for school, and it's hey, do this. And it's like, okay, sure. And it's like, boom, fix this one thing, and it's like, okay, sure. It's like, no, you didn't do anything, and it's this exactly what I'm saying. It still feels like it's so dumb in so many ways, and it's incredible in other ways where it's like, oh, I just saved myself 5 hours of research.
Yes,
that there's some use cases that are incredible,
and there's going to be a lot of things that you don't really know how to measure. So because it just, again, the work quality changes, the output changes. I was in a customer meeting with our sales team, working with a client, and we always demo our software for clients, but this time we demoed our software in the interface of that client's product. And it was because one of our solutions engineers coded up with Cursor an example of that company's product with our product embedded in it. And obviously we're betting that it will incrementally improve our chances of winning that deal. And so at scale, we should be getting
this is a prototype to win a new customer.
Yeah. And so incrementally, we should, again, over a large batch of customers, we should hopefully win 2% more deals or something like that. But even if you don't go that far, this just might be the new expectation that customers have, which is if you're going to sell me, show me how the thing works in my environment. And all of a sudden, we don't even know how to measure what just happened, but it's the new expectation of when you have to go demo a product, you should demo it in the working environment of that customer. And so you're going to see all these new use cases of AI that we just didn't do before. Just as, think about how much more work we do today than 20 years ago. Not maybe work, but what the output looks like differently today than 20 years ago because of now the tools that we have access to, right? 20 or 30 years ago, if you were an ad agency, it might take you 4 weeks or 8 weeks to come in and do, you think about Mad Men or something, you do one little proposal, you show a couple examples, and that was like a month or 2 of work. Well, now that's a designer for 2 days, and you go in and you do a
You're
presentation.
testing ads every day for 2 weeks. And
Exactly. So just as that became that much more efficient, and yet, guess what? We employ probably even more people in advertising. I mean, obviously we do by volume. So AI just does the same thing. We have no evidence that AI is not just the new version of that, where again, now instead of spending 2 days in Photoshop or Figma to generate the ad, creation and test it, now I spend, 20 minutes prompting 50 different versions. But again, where does the excess time goes? It goes into, I'm going to go deploy it as a test in a test market. I'm going to go get more analytics. I'm going to actually get feedback from simulated users. So the expectation will just raise as to what it means to now hire an advertising agency, or what it means to deliver a product to a customer. These are just the continued evolution of how the economy works.
And this is you in these sales meetings. This isn't some AI, Aaron.
For now, it's
Sora too.
Aaron. It's me, and this is another great example. Is I think there are some things that will be relatively timeless, and they transcend technological progress. I don't think you're going to be meeting with your AI sales rep, buying from them. I think you want to see that, okay, there's still a person there that I know if stuff goes wrong, I can call Sally, I can call Bob, and that person is on the other end, and they're going to go and fix that for me. I don't yet feel that way about an AI agent, and it's not obvious that I'll ever feel that way on the other side of a negotiation, on the other side of a vendor relationship. So people just don't go away in this process.
Box is one of the few companies that was able to transition to AI, and really, I know you were using AI before ChatGPT and machine learning and other things, but how did you both internally and externally shift is it the culture? Is it just the messaging, and then how you build products?
Yeah.
What did you do?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of happened in a few phases. Like the first phase was, we saw ChatGPT and we said, wow, this is obviously going to have a massive impact on our business.
It was obvious to you.
It was very obvious. Partly because we were primed for years in always wondering this question of like, well, what if we could let you tap into your data, much more easily? If you take a 10-page PDF, let's say it's marketing materials or sales materials, or it's a contract, let's say pre-AI, your only way of getting value from that PDF or that marketing asset is by looking at it, reviewing it, reading it. And so you might spend an hour just to glean a couple key concepts from this entire document. So we always wondered, well, at some point, would you be able to just ask your data questions and get answers back? And we had some very hyper-tuned, bespoke models that could do versions of that, but we never could scale it. So ChatGPT happened, and we were like, oh, this is finally the moment where we could scale that idea. What we didn't know at that moment was how quickly, let's say, the power of agents would come. We actually thought that we'd be more in this kind of chat back and forth model for a bit longer. The past year has blown our minds around AI agents, and this kind of upped the ante on what truly is going to be possible with AI. And we've sort of pivoted our efforts almost entirely to what does this world of AI agents on your data look like? But it's built on all of the infrastructure, all of the capabilities, all of the tools, all the experience, all the security and governance that we already created. So it's only a pivot in the sense of our focus has now been rearranged, but it's all on top of the stack that we needed to have to be able to get here.
Do you see big companies continuing to buy startups at the rate that they were previously? Or does this huge leap in AI code and tech shift the focus more to if we need it, we should just build it ourselves and use our team to kind of 10x themselves to build this?
It's interesting. Not to be overly nuanced in each of these kind of questions, like on one hand, AI is letting you code so much faster. So we regularly look at, a capability we want to build, and we're like, sure, you could maybe do M&A for it, but also, wow, we could go and build this a lot faster. We can prototype it more quickly. We could see how it would work. And so, our bias has always been, but it's I think even more reinforced by AI, to do organic development. And yet at the same time, based on how fast the space is moving and how disruptive some of the qualities of the technology is or can be, there'll often be a startup where it's 3 or 5 or 10 people, and you're just like, man, that team is doing the next version of this so much better than we'd be able to do. And the time to market is so much better if we could pull them in. And so we made an acquisition last year as an example in one of those spaces, and we regularly kind of look at the market through that lens. So I think it kind of nets out as mostly neutral, because At the same time as when you can build things far faster with AI, the disruptive quality of AI is so massive that getting one thing wrong could be left with you for a long enough time that you might see a team where you want to pull it in to let you execute on that.
Is it more a function of like they have distribution, they have revenue, they have a clear model that's working versus maybe, or the team? Is it, I mean, how have those dynamics do you think changed? Because it used to be that Cisco's buying dozens of companies a year, some for team, maybe a couple for product, same for Salesforce or an Apple, Google, maybe doing more sort of acqui-hire team, based things. But it does seem like things are much, much different than they were 10 or 15 years ago in terms of how a startup gets liquidity or investors get liquidity on a company.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any good stats, so I don't, and you have this other regulatory environment overlay that's sort of a little bit independent of the technology. I think if you had a DOJ FTC environment that basically said, sure, buy anything, it could be a totally different space out there. Google might have been buying things, every week. So hard for me to say what is the real kind of factor that's driving this. But I am still seeing a regular amount of M&A that doesn't, to me, sort of cause me to think anything's really changed.
How much of the CEO job is impacted by AI?
I think a lot in the meta sense, in the sense of like, it's a lot about how do you get your company to be operating in this new format. So I spend a lot of time thinking through like, how should we design our organization? How should we enable kind of the right change management and the tools to actually leverage AI? How do we kind of, push the limits of how people are thinking about rebuilding their workflows and their processes with AI? So it's a lot more of thinking through the future of work as opposed to sort of my specific job in a kind of tactical sense. Is that different? I'm using AI all day long to answer questions and generate information and build prototypes. So in that sense it's changing, but the bigger change is probably thinking through like, what does the organization look like in the future? How do we take advantage of AI to the greatest extent possible?
Are you still having fun?
Yeah. It's I'd say it's the most fun and most stressful that it's been in 15 years.
So,
which one?
Both. Start with fun.
Fun is just because this is the most dynamic period in the industry I've ever seen. I chose to focus and do tech for a reason, is because I'm just get excited by new technology. I was always the first person in high school to get like the Pocket PC and then a BlackBerry and then like a watch that could get stock information on it, just like whatever the new technology was, I saved up and tried to get that thing. Yeah. I love technology, was building, websites and
You had the most friends on AIM.
I did. I don't know if I had the most friends on AIM, but I had the most weird people on AIM. So my AIM list was, if my parents knew all the people I was talking to on AIM, they would not have been very happy in middle school and high school. So that was how I grew up. And so to me, it's like I'm the luckiest person because I get to just live and breathe it every single day, and it's a job now.
Yeah.
And so that's the fun part. Stressful part, it's moving. I mean, it's just the other side of the coin on why it's so fun. It's moving so fast that you're spending 24/7 thinking through what's the next move, when's that vendor going to do that, where's that technology going, how do I rebuild an agent architecture to take advantage of this technology. I mean, 2 to 3 nights a week, I'm on some Zoom call at 10 or 11 p.m. with either our CTO or engineering team or product on some new breakthrough we're working on, and is it shipping fast enough, and do we need to retool it, and how should we name that thing? And that I have not felt like that for quite almost literally since the founding of the company. And you kind of are in that nonstop mode right now.
It feels like some tweet hit, a post X post hits or this, and it's like, it's like, oh geez, like everything just changed again.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't want to react to every little thing, but at the same time, you have to stay totally glued in to everything that's happening so that you don't we're going to build this. And it's like, well, it's totally shifted this way.
Yeah. I mean, this is a moment where you have to balance the possibly paradoxical nature of high degree of nimbleness with a deep understanding of where the future is going.
Yeah.
We know exactly what we want to build 2 years out. We have no idea what the underlying underpinnings are really going to be. And so we have to have a lot of flexibility on the underpinnings because those are going to get sucked into the AI models. We know where we're trying to go, and we're willing to retool the kind of scaffolding to get there along the way. And you have to be totally comfortable with throwing away something that you spent 6 months building because now it's just been wiped out by a new model breakthrough. That's the reason why paying attention to the daily, changes is useful, because you could have a single announcement from a single AI lab that completely makes some architecture you built obsolete. And if you don't know that that happened and you spend another 3 months going down some direction that is now totally wiped out, you just wasted all that time. Maybe worse, forget the waste. You might be actually locked into a worse architecture that some competitor doesn't have. And then they blow past you in kind of their next set of features. So this is sort of a very much an Andy Grove environment of only the paranoid survive. You have to be deeply paranoid. You have to be paying attention to everything happening, but you have to be able to connect the dots in some way that doesn't make you thrashy because you're still going in some kind of long-term direction.
What do you do to make sure you're staying on the bleeding edge of everything?
The real answer is probably like the least interesting answer. I've spent a lot of time curating my X feed.
Okay. To just the people that are there that you follow are people that you trust are doing things that
and
build
just
the future.
I've obliterated all politics noise from my feed, and it's so dialed in that
I feel like that's probably been a positive.
it's been a huge positive. It's been a huge positive. I get wrapped up in elections, and sometimes it's good to just not get super excitable about the political environment. But my For You feed right now is like I think it's I could probably charge for access to it because it's just it's full alpha of what's going on in the AI space.
The last time I saw you mentioned a talk by Clay Christensen just across the street here at Startup Grinds Conference about 10 years ago that you said you still watch once a year. What about the late Clay Christensen's thoughts and models still mean something to you building a live public company today?
I'm just a massive fan of Clay's overall kind of philosophy, doctrine, understanding of business frameworks. Even when people sort of have argued that something hasn't really kind of gone exactly according to the plan of Innovator's Dilemma, I usually find that person just doesn't understand Innovator's Dilemma.
Yeah.
It is one of the longest lasting, kind of transcends all forms of technology and disruption concepts that I think exist in business. It's just a brilliant idea that gives you a framework for understanding how disruption plays out. It lets you kind of predict almost every one of the steps that are going to occur in a particular industry, because it's not about the technology. It's kind of about business model, but it's really about people. It's really about organizational theory, and you can kind of understand organizations, quite well through this framework, because you know how a company is going to adapt to different things when you understand their incentives and when you understand their in a later book, not Innovator's Dilemma, there's a concept called resources, processes, and values. And when you understand those three things relative to a company, you can kind of predict everything about what's going to happen, within a plus or minus 10% of the outcome. And so having that deep understanding, you can kind of watch these markets and sort of get a feel for what's likely going to play out. Why is Google going to respond the way that they're going to respond? What is OpenAI going to do next? How's Anthropic going to respond? Where's Microsoft going to go? Because you understand the incentives, the business models, the resources, their internal value structure, their ethos as a company, what would disrupt them, what wouldn't disrupt them. So anyway, that's very, very a lot of concepts in there. But in general, I think Innovator's Dilemma will largely predict most of what's going to play out in AI. It's going to show you how the incumbents respond. It's going to show you where the startups might win. It's going to show you where the startups will lose. It's a prophecy that will absolutely play out fully here. Which is just to say one other thing. Sometimes I feel bad because I think there's a lot of startups that just don't read Innovator's Dilemma, and then you look at the thing, you're like, I'm like, I can just tell you what your next 2 years are going to look like. It's not going to go the way you think it's going to go, because you need to understand the thing you're attacking. the crux of that, why that's not going to play out in the way you estimate, and how the company is going to respond. And if you did understand this theory, it would tell you either how to win or maybe pivot to a totally different idea.
Is it that they don't read it, or they read it and
they don't read it.
They can't apply it?
They don't read it. These kids these days, they're not reading it. Kids aren't reading. I mean, this is the problem. So first of all, they're not reading, and then they're definitely not reading it. So we've got a 2-layer problem with Innovator's Dilemma.
How much of your time are you spending playing defense, not getting disrupted, versus playing offense?
I think about 30% is defense. If I like really, I have a hard time fully.
It'll be exactly that.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll be right.
Yeah. Don't hold me to that. But I think 30% is defense in the sense of we think about like what's going to disrupt us, where could that come from, how do we control this position, and then 70% is sort of it's like, wow, what are all the new opportunities of what we can do because of AI? And for us in the space we occupy, it's a very, very long list of the new things that you can do as a result of having this artificial form of intelligence that can operate on your data. It actually expands our market dramatically with risks. Back to the defense, so we have to move quickly. We have to ensure that we're, outrunning the competition. But a lot of, fortunately, what we're doing is on the offense side.
Outside of family, who's the person you most admire?
I kind of love the aspect of entrepreneurship. So I have a fun time watching quite a lot of the leaders out there, whether it's, probably if I go in order, like Larry Ellison, just the sheer, economic stamina of just the ability to outlast every single other CEO and trend and technology curve that's ever happened, to now, an $800 or $900 billion company that was not written in stone. As an outcome, I've been fortunate to be able to watch and get advice over the years from, Benioff and Michael Dell and, really the kind of greats in enterprise software, Tom Siebel, Bill McDermott. So I look up to them in a lot of ways. And then there's a lot of new entrepreneurs that are just blow your mind every single day of how they're operating and how they're working. The Patrick Carlsons of the world, to just literally like people that are 3 or 5 person startups. I'll meet founders that I'm just like, wow, like they might think that they're asking me questions, but quickly I'm like, I need to just suck everything out of your brain. Like tell me everything about how you work and operate. And my mind is, kind of just dramatically exploding.
If you could implant one idea in everyone in the world, what would it be?
I think this idea of abundance, we should just try and all have a collective abundance mindset. We sort of fight over kind of resources too much. We should try and do more things that expand the pie, expand everything that we're looking at: energy, housing, education, healthcare, and just like try and expand everything and not get into this mindset of we're always kind of fighting over a small little piece of something. So that would probably be the biggest idea.
Is building Box the hardest thing you've ever accomplished, or is it something else?
The hardest I've ever accomplished. I accomplished kind of has this finality to it.
Sure.
So I think we're still building it.
And what accomplishment in your life are you most proud of?
I'm having quite a lot of fun being a dad. So we now have 3 kids, and so I think that would be that's probably the most fulfilling thing, and so that probably most kind of relates to feeling like an accomplishment.
What part of that are you having the most fun with?
It's like kids are just so funny. Like they're just like they're just every day there's something funny that they do, and you're just like it's more entertaining than anything else you'll ever experience.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Divot. On next week's episode.
I believe 2 things can be true at the same time. Meaning, if I'm believing this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm praying about it, but sometimes it's you putting in the effort, and sometimes it's you taking control. And there's a difference between the 2, especially when you're following what God wants you to do in your life. You definitely have to put in the effort, but you definitely shouldn't take control.